What's up guys, and welcome to another draw along with me. Today's tutorial is this futuristic electric style planet where we've got these sort of electric effects making its way up these columns and upwards and outwards from, say, the core of this planet. If you're new here, I post tutorials every week, so if you'd like to see content like this and draw along with me, be sure to subscribe down below and turn on the bell so you get notified every time I post a new video. Just before we get started with today's tutorial, if you're also a keen artist, then the folks over at Paperlike have got you covered. You can enjoy the sound and the feel of a paper-like texture on your screen when you're drawing. If you're interested in purchasing your own Paperlike screen protector, there'll be a link down in the description. So to get started, we're going to create a new canvas, and to do so we're going to hit the plus and hit this little custom icon here, and my canvas size is 2500 by 2500 and the DPI is set to 300. So we'll hit create, and as always there's a link in the description so you can use the same palette that I'm going to use today. For the palette we've got a series of blues as well as just the different colours for the electric lines themselves. So to get started we will change the background colour to the darkest blue in this bottom left hand corner. If we zoom out a little bit we can get an idea on the whole canvas. And then what we want to do is, with the background, we want to just set the glow in place to start with. So we're going to grab the blue colour here. I'm going to go to our brush library and select the airbrushing. And we're going to use the soft brush. I'm going to make that slightly larger to around about the 50% mark. And we're just going to do in a circular motion, create a glow towards this bottom half of the design and leave the top half relatively dark. And we'll leave that in place for now. I tell you what, we'll actually add a tiny bit of this light blue just here, just to add even more colour. Like that, that would do. And then we need to create a new layer. Now what we're going to do is create the floor for the design. So we're going to grab from our calligraphy section, our monoline brush. And we're going to select a variation on the blues. So let's just select this one here, which is the second row down, far left hand side. And all we're going to do is just draw a line roughly about a quarter of the way up the page or the canvas, and draw straight across. Hold your pen at the end, which will create a straight line, and then pop your finger on the screen and you'll get a perfect horizontal line, and then drag and drop that colour into that space there. So on a new layer we've now got our floor. What we'll do next is we'll just quickly create the mountains that will sit in the background that we'll eventually colour in. And so we're going to create a new layer, but we want this new layer to be below our floor but in front of the background colour obviously. And for this one we'll select a different blue, so we'll select this one in the top left hand corner and bring our monoline brush down to roughly around about the 10% mark. I'm going to create 3 different mountains potentially, and they're quite simple to do, these shapes. You go up in a point and then just come across like that. And what I'll do is I'll just change my brush to white for the moment so you can see what I'm drawing. I'm just drawing like up to a point and then straight down like so. And all you want to do is also make sure where your end point was that you draw all the way along and meet your starting point, and then drag and drop the colour in and you'll be able to fill in that whole colour. So I'm going to fill that in with the correct colour now, which is the one in the top left that we discussed. And I'm going to create on a new layer another mountain up towards this right hand side like so. These are really simple, not so much mountains really, but more like futuristic sort of hills. So we've got one mainly 2/3 on the left and one 1/3 on the right, and then we're just going to create one more, and this one needs to be below the 2 that we just created, and we're just going to create another one just here like so. And I'm actually going to hold my pen down and get a perfectly straight line on this one, and link them all the way around, and then drag and drop your colour in like so. So that's it for the background mountains. I might actually just uniform and then just drag this one out so it actually ends roughly there. So we've got 2 peaks quite close to each other. What we now want to do is then start to get started on the pillars and then the shapes for them, and then we'll move on to the glows. So if we go to our new layers, all of this content here now is we're going to leave for the moment. I'm going to create 2 new layers, and I'm just going to swipe on both of them. So make sure one's selected and swipe across, and then hit the option group, and that'll group those 2 layers together. It just makes it a little bit easier in a second when we continue on through the different approaches that we're going to do in the future of this design. And what I want to do to start with is I want to create the shape of the pillar on the left hand side, and then we'll flip it, adjust it, and then we've got the pillar on the right hand side. Now I'm using this color here for the moment, which is the far right on the top row, and I'm going to zoom in slightly, and all I'm going to do is create a diagonal line upwards like so, but slightly more at a sort of upward facing tilt, so roughly something around about that mark there. This is now our guideline for the edge of the pillar. We're going to have one side off to the other side and go from there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use this line to create the left hand side, then we're going to create the right hand side off of that. And what you want to do is you want to just set this sort of rock with straight lines with the monoline brush I'm continuing to use, and just draw some little shapes. We can go back in and adjust them. So I'm drawing, and don't worry if your lines overrun like here for example, because this is all going to be filled in shortly. But what we're essentially doing is building 3 different stages to this rock. So for example, this is the top section, and then I'm going to diagonally just create some little ledges where the rock maybe has broken down over time and creates these nice little, what I would call like almost shelves. And then we'll do another diagonal line like that, which creates another one, and then come all the way down like that until we at least just about match up to that. And don't worry if your lines are a bit skewed like mine are, because we're going to hide them shortly with a sort of mound of rock. So by the end, if I drag and drop my colour in, you'll end up with a shape roughly along those sort of lines. So we've got, as I mentioned, like a pointed top, we've got one shelf, a second shelf, and then a third one. And this just creates like the illusion that the rock gets smaller and thinner towards the top and chunkier towards the bottom. So what we'll do now is we'll go to our layers, and we're going to swipe this one to the left hand side that we just drew on, and we're going to duplicate it. And what we want to do is then go to this one on the top layer and make this one darker. So I'm going to select, for example, say this colour here. Actually, let's select the very darkest colour. Let's go for this bottom left hand colour for the moment, and we can change them around after. That's our shaded side of our pillar. And because we duplicated it, we've got this layer here with the blue, so we need to select the same blue. Basically what I'm doing here is I'm putting a shadow on top, which eventually will cut out, and then we'll be able to, when we cut out of it, the blue will be underneath. So this is how your layers should be. You should have a full dark layer of this pillar and a second one that we initially drew with the blue. And then with the blue, we're just going to sort of mirror this other side to an extent. We're going to draw in the rest of the side of this pillar. Now they don't have to match up fully. You can draw them however you wish. I'm going to draw a little flat point there, and then maybe another point, and then come across maybe like so. But the only thing you want to do is just see where those ledges come around, and maybe just factor in part of that into your design. So maybe like that, I would draw a little line coming off of that like so, because it reflects almost from there. And then we are going to grab our line and continue down. Don't have to mirror all of the ledges, but enough of them. And just like that, I've gone all the way to the bottom. Again, go across. So if I turn this layer off, you'll be able to see what I mean. This is the original blue that we had, and all we were doing was just adding in this other line here, which now if I drag and drop my colour into, will fill in the whole pillar from left and right hand side. So now if I turn this shadow back on, what we're going to do is we're going to cut some different sections out of it. So what we'll do is we're going to tap on the layer and select the option of mask, and then on the mask we want to make sure our colour is set to black, which will mean that we're essentially erasing on the mask layer. So make sure this part here is the one that's selected with the darker, more punchy blue. And if we zoom in, what we want to do is just erase some of the black section for these, what I called shelves earlier on. And by doing just straight lines from the edge, like so, and then filling in your shape with black, you start to create that illusion that the light's hitting the different layers of the rock and making sure there's some highlights in there and some shadows. And we'll do the same again. Maybe we'll come slightly down, so there's just a simple little bit of light just coming around here. And this one maybe not all the way to the edge. Maybe we go something along the lines of this, and you can either draw in your highlight like so, but then we get that little nice stepping look up the pillar. And again, I'll do the same here and fill in. And they can be rough. You can maybe rough them up a little bit. They don't all have to be straight lines. They look quite nice when they're straight. But that's our first pillar on the left hand side in terms of its shadowing. And now we can, with our shadow layer selected still, make sure we're on this layer now. We can go ahead and add some shadows to the highlighted side. So this side we added some highlights to the shadowed side. We're now going to do the opposite and add in some little shadows. So for this, you want to make sure your brush is set to black, and you want to make sure on your layer you're on this part of the layer, not the mask, so the actual layer itself. And we're just going to draw a straight line up here. Again, don't worry if your lines go outside in terms of the bottom of the design. We'll just get rid of them shortly afterwards. And then we'll create like a little line up here, like so. And what I'm doing here, like I said, is just adding in some shadows to the highlighted part of the pillar, like so. And if you don't like this sort of rounded edge, you could grab your eraser, go to the calligraphy and monoline again, and with the eraser kind of works the same way that your brush does. You can draw a straight line and hold your brush, and it will create a sharp, strong, straight line. So I've added a little shadow in there. Now what I did do by accident is I haven't set it to the right blue, so I'm just going to grab my colour and drag and drop that in there, so it's actually blue, not black. And then looking up the side of the design, we can start to add in some more of these little areas that come across and intercept the sort of shadows like that. What this does is it just makes it look like there's more. It's not just a solid, four-sided object. There's lots of smaller little sides in there as you make your way up the pillar. And you can go as far as you want into the pillar as well. I like to keep them quite close to the edge. But something like that looks pretty cool. And then I think we'll add in one more just around about near our sort of middle shelf, as I called it. Just add in that little line there, like so. And that's it for this side. That's our little pillar created. And now what we can do is, to save some time, because we made this a group, what we're going to do is we're going to collapse the group by using the little arrow here. And then we're going to swipe this to the left hand side and hit duplicate. So now we've duplicated everything within inside that group. And then with the top group selected, we're going to go to our cursor and drag this over to the right hand side, and then use the option flip. And then we're just going to place it where we want it, roughly like that, so at least the peaks of them are matching up. And then we've got the other side as well. But what we need to do is, obviously the lighting in terms of this left hand side is coming over from the right and hit in the right hand side of the left column. So we need to flip our shadows around, because this doesn't make any sense at the moment. And to do that, it's pretty simple really. We can either go in and just flip the colors around, which is what we're going to do, or you could go in and add in some extra little cracks on either side, but we'll flip the colors for now. So what we're going to do is we're going to hold our finger down on the screen, which will select the blue, and on the black layer or the dark layer, we're just going to drag and drop the color into all the places that we added it. And then on our bottom layer, we're going to go to our colors and we're going to select the color that we used, which is this one over here, and drag and drop that like so. So now all our layers have flipped and we're getting the opposite, we're getting the correct perspective, but the opposite of what it was before. So now the light is all coming from the right hand side. And in terms of this design, I'm going to leave it as it is. You could go in and make this side unique to this side. So you could change all these lines up. You could change the entire outline of the shape if you wanted to. But for the sake of the time for this particular tutorial, we're going to keep it as it is for the moment. But what we'll do is we're going to move on to the lighting side of things now, which is step sort of 2 in this process. So we're going to collapse our layers down, and we've got this column on the left hand side which we're going to work on first. So we're going to create a new layer above our shadowed layer, and we're going to go to our colors, and we're going to select the orange in the bottom right hand corner. Then we're going to go to our brush library, and we're going to go to the airbrushing section and select the option of medium blend. We've not used this brush before. So what we're going to do now is we're going to add in the little electrical lines that are going to make its way up this column all the way to the top. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go to our brush library and select from the airbrushing section the medium blend, and from our color picker we're going to select the orange in the bottom right hand corner. And my brush size is set all the way down to the bottom, which is 1%, and my opacity is set to roughly 45–47%. Now what we want to aim to do here is we want to draw in our electrical lines up the side of the column and follow the same lines that this column has, which is like this diagonal line up here. And what we want to do is we want to follow that sort of line very lightly. If you press too hard too quick, you're going to get a solid orange line like that. But the best thing to do with this particular style is build up the colors. You want some sections to be present but not super vibrant. So what we can do is we can just draw in a line and hold your brush down if you want to, your line down at the end, which will create a straight line, and then you can make sure the line itself is pointing in the right direction. And then I'm going to add in a little diagonal line. And it's okay if some lines, for example like this, you've got a nice faint one and then a brighter one, because ultimately that's just where you could chuck a highlight on it later on. And then I'm going to bring that line back in so it made its way around the other side of the column, back in and over the other side, like so. And again, I'm holding my brush down almost after every line, just so I get a nice straight line like that. And then when you have hit your shelves, you've got to factor in the angle of the little shelf that you created, like so. And then maybe this line continues up for a little bit more, like that. And maybe it splits at this point, so maybe it splits, you know, one way as well as the other way. And I'm keeping my angles the same every time, like so. And I just added a little bit more color to that one, so as in my angles are always the same. And then we can make our way up here like so. And again, the best thing to do with this style is build up the color. So don't worry if you like I've done here, there's barely any color here. You could go back in later on and just maybe touch that line up like that, for example. It's no problem. Also, I think it adds a little bit more to the design if you have some parts that are like a bit more vibrant than the other. It's just ultimately, like I said, where you'll end up putting the highlights. And again, these two lines maybe make their way across the little shelf that we created. And then we're going to go up the column. I'm going to create a nice large line for this one. And then I'm going to direct this one outwards, but keeping the same sort of style I've used for the rest of the design, like so. And as I think I've already mentioned, everybody's design at this point will start to look a little different from each other. You can add as many or as little lines as you want at this point and make it your own completely. So that's like one part of this done, and you can already start to see how it's going to start to come together. There's nice little parts that are highlights, and also, you know, we can add in the nice vibrant punchy parts in those areas that maybe I've pressed a little bit harder. What we'll do now is I'm actually going to just start again at the bottom here, and let's just punch this line out a bit more here, like that, like that. Now I could whiz the video on at this point, but I want to just, you know, show you sort of the process that I'm going through, and then you can, you know, maybe if you like something I did somewhere along this line or something, you can match it how you wish. And if you make a mistake, as I just did there, just put 2 fingers on the screen at the same time, and Procreate will undo your last action, and you can keep tapping with 2 fingers as well to go backwards. So what I've done there is, you know, this one's coming up the shelf, this one's coming up the side, but then this one's now veered off ever so slightly onto the other side, like so, and then just change the angle while it's over there. Maybe this line here now, zoom in, maybe this line comes across here and takes over from this line, and then we make our way up here, and then we maybe split this one, you know, in half, so we get two different lines off of it. And being a make-believe planet and a make-believe, you know, item, you can do what you want. If you know, nothing is a mistake on this particular style. You can just do as you wish and make it, again, make it your own. You know, I've accidentally added a really punchy line there, but I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave it because eventually it'll become a highlight of this particular style with the electrical lines. And I want the tip up here to be quite punchy anyway, so I'm going to make sure I press kind of relatively hard until I meet that top corner there. And then we're going to do the exact same thing but on this side. And don't go, personally I wouldn't add too many lines to your design. I wouldn't make it too dense, but again, it's totally your style depending on how you want to do it. Arguably I would maybe go back and slim that out a little bit, but I'm going to leave it as is. The only thing I've just got to finish off is adding this line in here and then wrap that around the side like that, so we lose a line, which is good. So for this side, maybe I'll slim it down a little bit, so maybe I'll just add one punchy line for the minute, like so. And we're going to change up this blue colour eventually anyway, so don't worry about this colour for the moment. It's just so we can differentiate between the different shapes and the different styles that we're doing at the moment. I'm just adding in all my different lines and planning out where I want them to go. So this one's quite a nice simple side so far, and the only thing I need to do is maybe factor in this guy here, make sure that where his line goes, you know, and you can have a line sort of fade out. Maybe it doesn't make it all the way to the top, maybe it doesn't quite reach, and then what we'll do is we'll maybe bring in one over here from the outside, so like it made its way around from the other side, and maybe then fire it straight back out as well. I think they always look quite cool when they come in, just a little corner piece really. Maybe we add another one down here where it's a little bit less busy, should I say, with these lines, and then fire it back out as well like that. So we've got two that come around the side and then go back out as well. And let's start at the top here then for a second and really come back down and make sure we link all our lines together correctly like that, and maybe this line goes like that and links up to the tip of this one like so. So if I zoom out and just show you the overall of where I went with my lines, you can get an idea roughly where they're laid out, and they should be nice and faint at this point because we're going to go in eventually and add the different colours and really punch up the colours eventually. So that's this side done, and I'm going to continue on this side first, and then we're going to then replicate everything again but on the other side and repeat the process. So I'm going to go to my layers, and this is the layer I just created. I'm going to swipe it to the left, which will make them slightly more punchy. I'm going to go to my adjustments and I'm going to go to Gaussian blur and select the option layer. And what we're doing here is just blurring out one layer of it to roughly about 4% because they're quite faint small lines, and that's just going to eventually add a bit more of a glow to the different lines that we added in all the different areas. And then I'm going to create a new layer, and for this one we want to go in and start to add in some bits of yellow to this style. But what I will do first is I want to change the colour of this blue because this one shouldn't be as punchy as it is. So we'll go to our layers and make sure we're on the blue layer, and we're going to just darken it up. I'm going to grab a colour and then test it out, see what that looks like. That one looks pretty good to me, pretty happy with that one. That also makes your lines really start to stand out a lot more. And then we can go back to our layers. So we should have the one new layer towards the top, we've got the blurry layer, and then the actual one that we created. So what we're going to do now is we're going to create a new layer in our group of all our layers for this column on the left hand side at the very top, and we're going to continue to use the orange, but this time we're going to go back in and we're going to punch out some of the lines where we want the sort of more light to come from, and we're going to continue with all of our settings exactly how they were, but what we're going to do is we're going to go in and press a little bit harder in certain areas and really punch out the colour in the orange. Now, I personally like it where it's quite bright towards the bottom, as if all the energy from this, you know, planet is coming up through the column. So that's where it's getting the most intense sort of light. So at least those two lines there are nice and punchy. And we're just going in and just highlighting ever so slightly in certain areas these lines and making them just super punchy where necessary. But we're going to go in and add the yellow, which is the main, you know, light source, which will really punch them out. And then we're just going to go across a few lines maybe that were slightly more faded, and just make sure that they are getting enough colour. Again, I'm drawing a straight line and then just holding my pen at the end just to make sure I'm, again, drawing a straight line, but it also works quite nice for this because it's quite geometrical. Cool, I'm happy with that. That looks awesome. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our layers and we're going to create a new layer. And now we're going to change our colour now to the yellow. And this is where we're really going to add in the punchy highlights. Now, you don't want to do too much here. These lines here are all like your foundations, but now what you want to do is really go in and add in the sort of electricity making its way up the column. But the yellow is the brightest part at this point, so you want to be quite scarce with it. You don't want to add too much. And I'm pressing quite hard, and then a little tip, if you press hard and then get lighter towards the end of the line, you'll get a nice faded out effect to it, and eventually it will like look like it's a beam making its way up towards the point. And again, I wanted this to be the most punchiest part, so I've gone in here and added the light towards the top where I want it to at the very least sit up there. And then I'm going to do the same here. And what also looks really cool is if you maybe have a line such as here, let's make that super like punchy, and then again we continue the line on basically, and then create our little straight line so it goes like that. And again, I want to make sure there's a good amount of colour coming from the bottom there, and I'm just holding my brush down at the end of every single line just to make sure it's nice and straight, and I can make sure it matches the initial line that I drew. Like so. And then I think we just need one more highlight on this side here, so maybe two on this one line because it's quite large. Maybe we go in and add two like that. And I think we just need one more, and where we'll pop it, we'll just see where we could land that line. I think it needs to go somewhat towards the middle, so let's add it in here. And let's wrap it around the side. Let's make this slightly longer than I anticipated, like that. So that's our first column on the left hand side done. We've got all the beams of light, and now we just need to simply replicate everything that we did on that side on this side. So I'll grab the color of that side and let's go to our column, and then where it's the lightest blue, we just need to drag and drop that color in. And what you can do is just hold your finger down on the screen anywhere, it will pick up the color, and then you can drag and drop that into wherever you need it to go. So in this new group, we're going to replicate everything we did on that side. So we're going to create one new layer. We're going to go to our colors and we're going to select the orange in the bottom right hand corner. We're going to go to our airbrush and make sure we're on the medium blend. And for this one, again, brush down to the smallest size and 45%. And here you want to just draw in your lines. So maybe look at this side and what you did, and maybe try and flip it, make sure it's slightly different from that side, as well as maybe do something where one side's more dense than it was on that side. So for this, I'm going to go up this side here, and again, this is your lightest layer, so don't go too hard with your colors, and just draw out where you want your electrical lines to go. Again, I could whiz this on, but I just want you to see maybe the different styles that I might do for this. I'm going to go straight up with this one. I'm going to go across the shelf one more time. And let's go up like that. Maybe up a little bit. And then we maybe split this line. so it goes in 2 different directions. So maybe up like that, and then maybe off to the side as well. So maybe this line diverts and goes all the way around the outside of the design. And as always, you can bring that line back in if you want. I'm going to go past that point and continue up. I'm going to split it over here and up to the top. And again, I want the light to come from this point too, so I'm going to drag my line to that point there. And if we zoom out, you get an idea that this line's made its way all the way up. So maybe we add in a second line here. If we've got a nice amount of space, maybe we go up to, like, say here, split the line, and maybe this one just goes to a dead end. And then maybe drag this one way up the design, like so. Maybe bring this one across, back onto its side a bit more. And I mean, really, we could go all the way up now and nicely link up to that line that we had there. And that's that whole side pretty much done. I won't add anything to that side. There's not going to be any wraparounds on this side like there is over here, but that's fine. And then what we'll do is we'll just do the exact same on this side. So again, we're just drawing in our foundation lines. We don't need to make them too punchy. I'm bringing this one out, bringing it back in, and then I'm actually going to send it straight back out, like so. And then we'll maybe split this one off, say here, create a nice line off of that. Like so. I think they look, like I said, quite cool if they split and like create different routes. It's almost like the line itself grew as this like pillar was being maybe devoured by this sort of energy. And it's also kind of nice to try and work out like the story of your design sometimes, you know, like what's actually happening in it. You know, where did this concept really come from? Why is it happening on your canvas? So I don't know, like I said, in this style, maybe the planet is forcing this column to you know, take these electrical lines up the side of it. Maybe I'm going to draw something here where this line maybe doesn't come from the bottom, but we just add a little diamond like here, which will look cool because it then sort of flips its way around the entire side like that, and it's isolated from everything else as well. I can see maybe this line here just needs a bit more love, a bit more colour, like so. And maybe we just add in one line here that never quite makes it, just makes it up to that point there. That's cool with me, that looks nice. We've got a couple of different styles that maybe we haven't done on here, like this little part here, but ultimately they all meet up at the top. So then if we go to our layers, we're going to create a new one above that. And again, this same process, we're just going to simply zoom in and add in where we want to add some extra colour and really punch out some lines if we want to, that we maybe left a little bit scarce. But we don't have to do, you know, the whole line. You can leave a little gap like that, this little gap here. And we create a new line just because the colours that we draw ultimately might build up on the layer underneath. And that will also create like nice sort of randomness to the colours. Like so. And then we're going to punch out this line here a bit more, like that. And this one here could just do with a little, again, I like it when it's quite vibrant from the base. Like that's the most powerful sort of part of this. Like so. And that looks cool with me. So we're going to go to our layers. We're going to go to the one that we had underneath, which was the original foundation layer. Swipe that to the left. And same as we did before, we're going to go to Gaussian blur under adjustments and blur that out to roughly 4%, which just gives a tiny bit of a glow to everything that we drew in there. And then we're going to go to our layers. We're going to create one new one at the top, and then this will be our yellow layer where we add in our highlights. So we're going to work out where we want to draw these in. Maybe this little diamond here has got a lot going on, and we add in some punchy yellow lines like that. Let's draw that back in again. Like so, that looks quite cool. Also highlights it quite nicely. And then maybe draw in some nice long yellow parts. So this one's quite a long one. Like so. And again, maybe that one doesn't quite make it. Again, I like the colour to come from the bottom quite punchy, like so. And don't worry if your lines don't match up directly on your lines either, that's fine. And that one was slightly off by like 2 pixels. It's not a problem. It maybe adds to it, if anything. And then we do the same down here, just add in our power lines, if you want to call them. So I'm focusing quite a bit more on this right hand side, but maybe I should dive in here, add in some little extra bits like so. Like that. And like I said, sometimes they look quite cool if you just draw like a really punchy line and then just leave it like that, because it's just showing like it pulsating its way up to the top. I'm gonna just draw that in like that. And I've got quite a few highlights on that one, which is cool. Differentiates it from the other side. And that is our highlights for this side done as well. And now what we can do is start to just draw in then the little bits that are on the floor and then the big glows that are coming out. And ultimately what we're going to do is we're just going to duplicate this layer and pop it further back in the distance, just because those pillars aren't really going to be seen too much. We can sort of cheat ourselves a little bit and pop them in the distance so the 4 pillars will all be facing the sky together. So in our layers, let's start on the left hand side because that's where we've started with everything. So we're going to go to our group for that, and you can just turn the group on and off just to be sure. We're going to go to our layers and create one new layer, and we're going to grab a color such as this one here. I'm going to go to our brush library and we're going to go to calligraphy and select the option monoline. And all we're going to draw is simply draw in a bouncy sort of mound in front of this column, and then go all the way around and link it up and drag and drop the color in. Where essentially this is like a little mound, and this is where we hide all those little parts underneath. And then what we're going to do is we're going to go to our color picker, we're going to double tap on black, and we're going to create a new layer above that one, and we're just going to draw in the rocky surface of it, but these are just like sort of blobs. So you draw in like a rough shape here like that. We're going to draw in the main dark area such as this, so this will all come into play slightly later on, so you can drag and drop your colors in of black, and then you're just sort of creating some sort of rocky simple texture here. Maybe one more over there as well, like so, and that creates that sort of illusion that this side's all the dark, you know, shadows, and then that's the actual color of the rock. And we'll leave that as it is for a moment because we're going to replicate the exact same thing on the other side. So we're going to go to our layers and go to our group and create a new one, and a new layer at the top, sorry, and then we're going to select that blue, and again with the monoline brush just draw in something that just meets up to your column like so. Bring it all the way around and drag your color in, and make it slightly different from the other side. I'm going to go to our layers, create one new one above that, and select the color black, and again draw in your sort of maybe initial shape first because that works out where you've got space, and then drag and drop your color in to then add in these sort of other little sort of shadowed areas of this sort of rocky mound. Maybe add in like a small one here, and add in another one like so, like that, so it's slightly different from that side as well. And what we want to do is we want to make that color the right color, so we're going to go into our layers, we're going to select the color of the column and we're going to select, say, the darkest side, like so. And then on our layer, which is the blue section here, just going to drag and drop that colour in. You'll barely be able to see it. But then what we're going to do is we're going to tap on that layer and select the option Alpha Lock. We're going to go to our colours and select the orange. And all we're going to do is go to the airbrush and the soft airbrush. And then making that quite small to roughly 15%, just draw in ever so slightly a nice little glow towards the top. That highlights the edge and the shadows, but it'll also come into play when we start to add in our other highlights as well. You could differentiate that between maybe using the yellow or the orange, but I quite like the look that the orange gives. It's quite like a red colour, and then it also makes it slightly purple. And then, as always, replicate it on the other side. So we go to our layers, we go to the group for the other side, we select the blue, which is this layer here, and again we drag in the dark colour that we want, and then again we tap on that layer and select the option Alpha Lock. And now we've made that the dark blue, we go to our colours, we go to the orange, and then again a circular motion just towards the base of the column, like so. That was maybe fine as it was before. And then we've got our little mounds in front which hide the column coming out of, say, the base of the planet. And then what we want to do is also add the same sort of glow here, but to the column itself as well. So we're going to go to our layers for this left hand column now, because that was the last one we worked on. And we can add a highlight to either side of the column, and by doing that we can add the highlight basically to the shadowed area first, and then add one to the base layer. So if we go to our shadowed layer and just turn it on and off just to double check what layer you've got selected, create a new layer and tap on it and select the option Clipping Mask, which means everything we're about to paint can only go in the pixels of the shadowed area. And with the orange selected and the soft airbrush, I'm just going to create a little circular motion up the side there, and that's it. That's all you need to do. You could, make it really punchy, but based on what we're going to do slightly later on, I'm going to leave it like that. And then we're going to go to our layers, go down to the base layer of the column, create a new layer above that and do the same thing and tap on Clipping Mask. Go to our colours, I'm going to select yellow for this side because it's the highlighted side, so the orange is like the shadowed version. And again, circular motion with the yellow, just up the side here like that. So all we're doing there is just creating the illusion that this is kind of coming out the ground and that there's light coming through like a hole in the ground. Same as always, we then go back to our layers, collapse that group and open up the group for the other side. And the same as before, we tap on our highlights now for the right hand side of the pillar. Tap on that and create a new layer and tap Clipping Mask. And with the yellow still, because we're on the highlighted side, circular motion again, just very lightly. The first time was enough. Make a circular motion and a little bit of a glow. And then we go down to the base of the pillar, which in this case is the shadowed side. Create a new layer above that, tap on that and create Clipping Mask. And then go to our orange colour. And again, circular motion, like so. And that just gives a little bit more to these little columns that we've created, and the light source really punching its way through like that. So now what we want to do is add in the big beams of light that are coming through the planet from this hole in the ground as well, that are making their way up past the columns. So what we want to do is go to our layers and create a new layer just underneath this mound that we created for the right hand side, because that's the last column that we worked on. And so this is behind this mound here. And then go to your brush library and select calligraphy and the monoline brush. And then with the orange colour in the bottom right hand corner, doesn't matter what your brush size is for this, we're just going to draw a straight line up and out. Now, not so it's the same angle as the column, but slightly more outwards, like so. So it creates like a wider sort of beam towards the top. I'm going to create 2 lines up and out from that point, like so. And what you want to do is just make sure your lines, so I've drawn a line behind there, match up, so that when you fill the canvas like so, it would actually fill in just the beam of light itself rather than the whole canvas. So I've just dragged and dropped the orange in because ultimately we're going to erase quite a large part of this. So what I want to now do is grab from my eraser under the brush library, select the option of airbrush and soft brush, And what I want to do is, first of all, just go straight down the middle and kind of erase ever so slightly the center part, like so. So we get a bit of a glow towards the outer edges. So we left the middle quite transparent, like so. And then I want to make my brush much larger at roughly around about 50–60% and start to, in a circular motion, erase down the column until we get rid of that top edge, but there's a lot of color down here. And don't worry if it's too punchy for the minute, because we will just lower the transparency on that. But you'll end up with something like this where you can't see that top edge anymore. There's not a straight line, and we blurred it all out. We erased part of it and erased this center part as well. And then you can go to your colors, your layer, and tap on normal, and then lower the opacity down to roughly around about 50%, like so. Now, if you're really happy with that and you don't want to do the same steps again, you can simply duplicate that layer by swiping it to the left and select duplicate. Now drag that layer out and put it at the very top, collapse that down and drop it into the group of this column here on the left hand side, and then go into your layers and find it, and then drag it into position where it needs to be, which is just underneath the mound, and then go to your cursor and flip it horizontally like so, and you'll be able to pop it in position where you want it, like that. And then we end up with two beams from either side. What I want to do though is the beams themselves are slightly too sort of sharp, so we could either go to Gaussian blur and blur out the entire beam like so, which will make it nice and soft. And I think I'm going to stick with that, so 14%. We're just going to blur that out too. I'm going to do the same on the other side, so collapse that group and go to the beam on the right hand side, and then you're going to go to adjustments, Gaussian blur, layer, and from left to right, blur that out to roughly 14%, like so. That just makes that light a lot softer and not so vibrant. And maybe let's just lower the opacity down on both of those down to 35%. Again, with all of this stuff, you can only really know where you want to lower the opacity down to when you start to see the whole thing more come together. So now we've got our two columns, and essentially they're done now. We don't need to add anything else to them. So what we can do is, we've got column on the left hand side, like so. We could swipe that to the left and hit duplicate. Now, depending on your iPad, you might not have enough layers to do that, but fingers crossed you do. And you can just go to the cursor and use the uniform, make that smaller. And if I zoom out, maybe we only add a third one. That's it. Maybe we don't add the one on the right hand side and make 4. Maybe we just do one like that. Maybe rotate this one ever so slightly, like so, like that. And then what we can do is because this layer that we just created is above our groups, we just need to drag that column underneath this one here so it sits in behind. And likewise, we don't want this mound here to be so sharp at the bottom. It needs to fade out. So what we'll do is we'll just zoom in and we'll make that minor adjustment. Essentially what I've done there is just save some time by adding in the third column that I want, but not having to draw all that back out again, because I'm happy to simply duplicate that and chuck it in the background. So this mound, if we go to the group layer for this particular column and then go to the mound of it, which you can turn on and off just to be sure, and likewise the shadows for it, I'm going to simply merge those two together, which merges everything on that mound together. And I'm going to go to my eraser and use the soft airbrush and drop it down to roughly 10% and just blur out that bottom edge like so, which is fine, like that. And now it nicely sort of transitions into the ground underneath. So we've got 3 columns now for our design, and there's not really a great deal left to do now in terms of the sort of aesthetics. We can just add in the sort of dark moon in the background, the sky, the stars, and highlight some extra content in these mountains in the back. So just for ease of use, I'm going to turn off these groups here so we can see our background mountains as well, because we're going to make some adjustments to those. So I'm going to go to my layers, and you can just turn off the group, all 3 of them, and then you're left with your background. So we've got our mountains in the background, and what I want to simply do is change the color of them. And I want to change it to the dark color that we've used, maybe up here in the top left hand corner. Let's go to our colors actually and select it, which is this one here. And then we're going to go to that layer, tap on it and use the option of alpha lock. So this is the mountain on the far left hand side to start with. Drag and drop our colour in. And then what I want to do is just simply add a highlight colour to it. So I'm going to go to my colours and I'm going to select the option of, let's say, this one here. So bottom row, third one along. Go to my brush library and select the option of monoline. And let's make this brush roughly around about the 10% mark. And then with that layer still alpha locked, you can just draw a straight line like that, hold your brush down, and then go back in and make your brush bigger and just fill in that section on the right hand side here. And again, don't worry about this sort of little edge here that's a bit messy because ultimately it's hidden. And then we can go to the next one up, tap on that and go to alpha lock, then drag and drop the dark color in this bottom left hand corner into there. And then likewise, same process, grab our highlight color, which is this one here, and then simply draw a straight line across until you're happy with where it sits, like so. And then the last one is this mountain right in the background. Tap on it, alpha lock, drag in the correct color, which is this one here, into the mountain. And then also give this one its own highlight by selecting the blue. Monoline brush, draw a straight line, like so, and just fill in any of the gaps. And all we're doing there is just literally highlighting just a little bit of the section towards the middle where the light is. And while our layers are turned off for the columns, let's just add in some color to the floor underneath. So we'll go to our floor layer, which is this one here. We're going to create a new layer above it and tap on clipping mask. And then we're going to go to our colors and select the orange color. And then go to our airbrush and the soft airbrush. Let's make this fairly large at roughly 30% and very lightly towards the center. Circular motion, just draw in some color like that. And if you want to, you could go to Gaussian blur and layer, and then go to Gaussian blur and layer if it works, and then blur that out just so it's nice and soft. So it's like 40% there. And then when we add our columns back in, that'll add just a little bit more light to this. If we go to our layers next and go down to the very bottom where we added the glow for the night, we can add in our moon in the night sky. So we want it to be behind our little mountains but in front of the sky. So we're going to create a new layer, tap on that and select the black color by double tapping on the color picker. Go to our brush library and select calligraphy, and then we're going to use the monoline brush and just draw in a black circle. Hold your pen at the end, which creates a perfect ellipse, and then put your finger on the screen and it'll create a perfect circle. And then just drag and drop the dark color in like so. And then with the cursor selected and uniform, just going to drag that until it fits smack bang in the center of the canvas. To do that, just go to snapping and turn on snapping. And when your object hits the orange line, that means that it's perfectly centered in the middle of the canvas, like so. And what we're going to do next is create one new layer above that. Go to our colors and double tap white in the top left hand corner. Using the monoline brush, drop it all the way down to 1% and just start dotting in your stars in the sky. You could group some together, you could nicely space some out. It's good to have a little bit of randomness to them, but sometimes have a nice cluster of them together. And be careful with the monoline brush, such as I've done here, here and here, where essentially if they are lines rather than dots, and that's because I've dragged my line like that. You should just tap on the screen like so, and that's added some stars in the sky. And we'll just go to our layer, go to its layer options and just drag that down to roughly 30%, just so that they're nice and faint in the distance, like so. And then if we go back up to our layers and then turn on the 3 groups for the column, we can now start to see what we've created, where we've got these columns in front of us, the dark moon in the background, as well as our mountains in the distance. Now what we could do here, now that even though I've placed it nice and central in the middle, I want to just raise that moon up a little bit, because now we've turned that layer on. It just needs to be raised above our columns like so. And you could then do this nice effect where we maybe swipe the moon to the left and duplicate it, go to the one underneath. We're going to go to alpha lock for the moment and just fill it in with white. So we're going to go to our brush library. The easiest way to do this is either go to the layer, tap on it and select fill, really, and that'll fill that layer in white. And then we need to turn off the alpha lock, and we can go to our adjustments, Gaussian blur and layer, and from left to right just blur that out. It makes a nice little glow in behind. And then we're going to grab that layer and just go through our different options here until we find something that gives off a nice glow, such as soft light there. So I've changed that layer to soft light, and you just get like a nice little glow in behind there. Now there's a few little adjustments I've noticed that I would personally now change. So I'm going to turn off my columns very quickly. I'm going to go in and I'm going to change this highlight color to something a little bit darker, but still darker than that. And I'm just going to very quickly go in to each layer, go to my calligraphy and monoline brush, make that quite large, and just overlap the highlight that I put in and just make it slightly darker like that. And this is just me now going back in and touching it up, because I don't plan these out other than the concept in my mind of what I'm going to draw ahead of time. And sometimes you'll go back in and just make some refinements, and that's always a good thing. You can start to perfect what it is you've drawn. What I'd also like to do now is I want to lower this blue in the background. I don't want it to be so punchy. I actually want to make it black and white. I'm going to go to my adjustments and I'm going to go to the hue and saturation and select layer, and then I'm actually going to drop the saturation all the way down to let's just say 10%, and maybe just darken it down as well to 45%, and then that creates a more of a night sky back there. And then if I go to my layers and let's turn on these columns again, now the background mountains aren't so punchy. It means that we've now got more of a focus on the content in front of it. The only thing I would actually then also do is I'm going to change that from soft light back to normal, and then just drop that down to 10%. And this is the glow that's in behind the moon here, or this dark sort of black hole. And the only other thing I want to also change is I don't like these edges here where they're slightly blue on the outside. I want to go to my layers, and where I added the highlight for the middle, I'm going to work on that layer still. I'm going to select the very dark colour in the bottom left hand corner, which is actually this colour here, the dark blue in our canvas. And I'm going to go to my brush library and select the option of airbrushing, and I'm just going to fade out that right hand side edge and also the left hand side edge like so, which I think nicely focuses more attention on the content in the middle. Likewise, maybe could just fade out this bottom edge here as well. So what we're really doing now is focusing more on the light content in front of it. And that concludes our design for today. If you've enjoyed this tutorial, please drop it a like below. It helps me know what content you do and do not like. And if you could drop a comment as well, let me know how you got on. I'd much appreciate that as well. If you have any questions or get stuck at all, pop them in the comments. But otherwise, if you get really stuck, just drop me a DM on Instagram and I can help you out with that. No problem. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.